it was a long disillusioning process for me. I worked in the Democratic Party for, off and on for about almost a decade. And I just saw them slowly over time kind of drift away from talking about key issues like health care. That's originally why I got involved in Democratic politics. And bringing jobs back to the United States. A lot of jobs have been shipped overseas. And just focusing on like the economy and these core bread and butter issues. And instead kind of getting into these views that appealed more to, like, I would say I think you guys call them in Britain the metropolitan elites. I'm originally from the heartland. I'm from the middle of the country in the U.S. And, my family are people that used to vote loyally for Democrats mostly, and over time have sort of drifted to the right and started voting for Donald Trump too.
But they're going to outweight me, so I don't care about the midterms. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I'm doing that for the world. I'm not doing it just for us.
Disunited States on Times Radio Drive.
Welcome to Disunited States, our special segment on Times Radio Drive, where we take a look at all things USA ahead of the upcoming midterms. Today, we're looking at how the Democrats lost the working class and what they'd have to do to get them back, with Evan Barker, a former Democratic fundraiser who raised over $50 million for the Democrats before abandoning them in 2024 and voting for Donald Trump in the last presidential election. Welcome to you, Evan. I hope you're okay this afternoon. Nice to talk to you.
It's morning here. Great to talk to you. It's so wonderful to be here.
Well, look, I'm really interested in your journey. You posted a TikTok video confessing that you could never vote for Kamala Harris after having seen from the inside how the party had lost its soul. What really drove you to that, and what was the reaction like when you said that?
Oh my gosh. At that time, I think I almost had a rougher reaction than right now, even with releasing this book. So I think that basically there was a lot of things actually that led me to voting for Kamala Harris, or not voting for Kamala Harris. It was a long disillusioning process for me. I worked in the Democratic Party for, off and on for about almost a decade. And I just saw them slowly over time kind of drift away from talking about key issues like health care. That's originally why I got involved in Democratic politics. And bringing jobs back to the United States. A lot of jobs have been shipped overseas. And just focusing on like the economy and these core bread and butter issues, and instead kind of getting into these views that appealed more to, like, I would say I think you guys call them in Britain the metropolitan elites. I'm originally from the heartland. I'm from the middle of the country in the U.S. And, my family are people that used to vote loyally for Democrats mostly, and over time have sort of drifted to the right and started voting for Donald Trump too. And, it's this real disconnect, I think, that the party has with just like middle of the country people, and not being able to relate to them anymore. There's been this great realignment in the U.S. And it's actually based most on, I would say, educational lines, where, working class people that without college degrees that used to vote loyally for the Democrats now vote for the Republican Party. And it seems to me that, in many ways, the Democrats, I think they might be somewhat, I think they're definitely a lot more receptive to understanding this than they were in 2016 when he won. But they still have a lot of work to do. And I think we're seeing that with these primaries in the U.S. that are playing out right now, with a lot of, the candidates that they're picking are even further to the left than Kamala Harris was on so many social issues.
Oh, yeah, Evan, but it's interesting because, the Democratic Socialists, that they're now called, they are winning elections, as you say, across the country for local, state, national office, but they are talking about universal health care, public ownership of key industries, and punitive taxes on the wealthy. Is that not something that a genuine Democrat like you were might welcome?
Yeah, so I'm in support of universal health care, and I do think wealthier people, should pay their fair taxes, and we should close loopholes and stuff like that. Those were the issues that actually drew me to those types of candidates to begin with. The problem is that they couple it, with all of these far left social justice issues as well that are really unpopular and really toxic to winning back working class people. It's like they think if they only focus on the economy, that's going to be enough, and they can just kind of hand wave away all of their previous positions. And some of them aren't even doing that. A lot of them are actually still defending those positions. People like Abdul Al-Sayed, who just won his Senate race in Michigan. I actually worked for Abdul. He's doubling down on things like defund the police and campaigning with Hassan Piker. Working class people also care about their values. And I think, the identity politics thing has been a huge thing in the United States. Immigration, policing, all of those issues, they still matter to working class people.
And Michigan is a swing state, isn't it? So it'll be very,
Yes.
very closely watched to see what happens there. Do you think that Abdul El-Sayed could win there? What do you think?
I think he could definitely win. I mean, I think that in the midterms right now, obviously, there's been a lot of disappointments with the Trump administration. I'm somebody who's disappointed in the Trump administration right now.
You
with
might
the
switch
Medicaid.
back then.
I mean, I don't know if I'll ever switch back. I think the Democrats did a lot of damage, and I'm not really there yet with them. But I didn't ever switch to become a Republican too. I became an independent, and so I could definitely vote for a Democrat again. In fact, I have voted for a Democrat, and I've also voted for a Republican since I voted for Donald Trump. I voted for both, depending on the person, the policies, and where they're running. But I think definitely the climate favors the Democrats. That being said, I think Abdul definitely has a lot of baggage that comes with his candidacy, campaigning with Hassan Piker. I don't know if people in the UK are familiar with him, but he's a very incendiary, far-left podcaster that has said some horrible things about the United States and 9/11. And, I think, working class people are very patriotic too, and they do revere their values and their cultural values especially. And so, if I were still working with Abdul, I would tell him that he needs to moderate on some of these key alienating issues.
Well,
and I don't know if he will.
Well, you never know. He might take your advice. He might be listening to us, and it'd be great to interview him if he would like to talk to us here on Times Radio. Evan, really nice to talk to you. Thank you ever so much.